Welcome, everyone. And okay, so as I was saying, we've been going through a journey of 2,500 years, watching how philosophy changes and develops, and along with technology and politics and science and art. And so, can you see my screen? Yeah. So we went into the Enlightenment, right? And that was a response to the political church. It wasn't a destruction of spirituality, right? It was, freedom's the most important thing. And there was optimism that instead of having, there was a time when even every painting had to follow the rules put forth by the church. There was no freedom of creativity, which is hard to imagine because we do have that freedom in our world today. So during the Enlightenment, recall, we pulled away from the tethers of the church and created greater freedom in Europe, and even further freedom after the Revolutionary War in the United States. And then the Enlightenment landed here, right, in the US, and we got Emerson. And an interesting thing happens when people have freedom. And remember the piece we read by Kant, he anticipated this. As soon as we give people freedom, they're going to become lazy and cowards. Why? Because they like their comfortable life. So they're going to be less inclined to be involved in politics and what's going on, stir the pot, all of that kind of thing, right? And he's right about that. So when you're struggling for freedom, though, you're on top of everything. You know everyone on the cabinet, you'd know all your senators and local representatives. But with that leisure comes downtime and repetition and a kind of boredom. And so this is just the human condition, though, right? We fight for freedom, and then we get bored. What? And so comes along Kierkegaard. Now, you had Immanuel Kant, and after Kant came a philosopher named Hegel. And Hegel said that he changed his philosophy, added different levels of recognition, the kind of recognition we need from each other in this life, which is true, right? Even if you're a loner, if you write poems and play music, eventually you want someone to hear them, right? So we don't do this life alone. And so we're having this leisure, and we have jobs, and we get up in the morning, and we make breakfast, and then we have lunch, and we come to class on Zoom, and and it gets repetitive, right? Do you ever have those moments where life feels repetitive? I was doing laundry last night, and my neighbor and I were like, laundry again. And but then we thought, well, we should be grateful that we have stuff to wash and have laundry facilities to wash them. You have to remind yourself to have an attitude of gratitude. So Kierkegaard comes along after Hegel, and he's critical of Hegel, this philosopher who followed Kant and was critical of Kant, because Hegel had said that he found the final solution, like the ultimate ideas, like after Hegel you could be done. And of course Kierkegaard, having intellectual humility, knew that that was wrong. That's impossible. Thinking and being and moral ways of being are always in a process of becoming, of developing, right? We know this from the pre-Socratic philosophers, so starting 2,500 years ago. And of course, this was in Eastern philosophy and all around the world. We're just looking at it from the Western lens. And so Kierkegaard has a response to Hegel. So Hegel wrote a book called The Phenomenology of Spirit, and it's thousands of pages long. It's very labor intensive, but it's a great book. I spent years on it in grad school. But Hegel was reluctant to write a preface. He just thought, no, everyone should just read my book. But prefaces are great because they give you a nice overview, a quick overview of a book, and kind of you don't have to read the book. And many times if a preface is done well. And so that's what happened with Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit. Hegel didn't want to write the preface. He wrote the preface, and over time, everyone just read the preface and not the book itself. So Kierkegaard, in an indirect, ironic way of criticizing Hegel, rather than writing a book and saying what Hegel got wrong, he wrote a book that is a series of prefaces to a book that will never exist. Isn't that a hilarious way to, address criticism of another philosopher? Anyway, the point, and I hope you appreciate it. I see Kayla smiling a little bit, but you think about doing something like that and it would be funny, right? But he actually went to the trouble and did this. So it's a book called Prefaces, and it's a series of prefaces. So a lot of what you read in Kierkegaard, you have to read in deeply. You have to understand his wider philosophy to understand his jokes, to understand why it's funny, right? Because if you're not an insider and someone tells a joke, a philosophy joke, you're not going to get it if you don't know anything about that particular philosopher. So I set that up right away so that you know that Kierkegaard, the way he presents his philosophy is through storytelling and through humor. He uses pseudonyms, so not his own name for the books that he writes. And he's always just kind of got, it's not mean-spirited humor. He's always just kind of got this wink, right? Like wink, like, look, you get that I'm messing with you right now, because he wants to get you to think. Just like the other great philosophers, they're not looking for followers. They're looking to share ideas so that we can collectively make this world better together. So Kierkegaard is considered, here he is, these are the years of his life, he's considered a proto-existentialist, and that is just the meaning he was an existentialist before existentialism was a thing. And so here's just a proper definition. Existentialism is a tradition of philosophical inquiry that explores the nature of existence by emphasizing experience of the human subject, not merely the thinking subject, but acting, feeling, living human individual, right? Because remember Descartes, we are thinking things, yes? Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I exist. So with that, he's a rationalist philosopher. So you got self-evident truths, right? By thinking clearly, by using your good sense or your good reason. But here we're putting all of life into philosophy, the nitty gritty, the gray area, the stuff that no one talks about. Kierkegaard talks about it. So what I like to do is share Kierkegaard's philosophy with you like this, through one of my favorite books, Stages of Life's Way, the real book and the image of a book. And because these 3 stages are essential for understanding the piece that you read today, which is rotation of the crops. And what is rotation of the crops about? Anyone want to chime in here? It's about boredom, isn't it? Doesn't he say that the root of evil is boredom? And what does he mean? When's the last time you were bored? Did you get bored during the pandemic ever? And when you get bored, do you almost want to do things that are, not right, forbidden, wrong? Yeah. Because that's human nature, right? And one of the things that Kierkegaard writes right away is that when children have something to do, right, when they're busy, they don't get into trouble. The moment like the TV goes off or, Wi-Fi goes down, forget it. First thing you do is find like something to stick into the outlets, and shock themselves. It's terrible, those little knuckleheads. But as human beings, as we get older, we do the same thing. We just have, instead of putting things in the outlet, we do, we do other kinds of things we're not supposed to. So rotation of the crops is all about the human condition and the kind of boredom that overcomes us. And it's the question of, how do we deal with that boredom? How do we manage the boredom and make our make ourselves a wonderful life. And so the piece that you read for today, Rotation of the Crops, is from a book, and it's in two volumes, called Either Or, that Kierkegaard wrote. And it's a series of shortish, they're all kind of long really, stories about people in their different stages of existence. And the three stages are this: the aesthetic, the ethical, and the spiritual. And remember, what we're doing in this class is you're self-reflecting. So you're not reading the work and a secondary writer who tells you how to read Kierkegaard. You're reading Kierkegaard, and that's essential. And interestingly enough, over time, if you continue with philosophy, you'll find that, in fact, reading secondary writings, like in a textbook that tell you how to read Kierkegaard, are more difficult and challenging than reading the work itself. So I know I've made this point before, but I want you to know that you're reading the actual philosophers, and you're trusting yourself that you have the capacity to understand it yourself. It's just, this is how philosophy was intended, not to have a watered down explanation of rotation of the crops. You do that intellectual, rigorous work on your own, right? Otherwise, it's, we're not even doing philosophy. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. So in Either Or, these two volumes, Kierkegaard's also going through these three spheres of existence. And the piece that you read is from the aesthetic sphere. So what we want to do is go through and see what these spheres are, just generally. And so while Rotation of the Crops is from the aesthetic sphere, by the time we get through with these slides and talking about the piece that you read, you will see that he's actually kind of, traveling through the three spheres. Yes? I know you can't know what that means yet, but I promise you will very shortly. Hi, Sophia. Glad to see your face. And so the aesthetic sphere, beauty, art, eros. Eros is romantic love. Remember that from the ancient Greek words for love. And so when you're in the aesthetic sphere, you're always in the moment. You're always looking for the next guy or the next girl. We used to call them Don Juans, right? The guy who was just dating lots of gals. And now we can call them the Don Joannas, right? Because women do slide left or right or whichever way it goes now, right? In dating. Right now we have something called, what's the app called, where the dating app?
Well, there's a lot, but do you mean Tinder?
Tinder, yeah, thank you, Tinder, right? So the people who just always are on Tinder looking for the next new date, right? That would be a womanizer. And here's Pablo Picasso. You know who he is, the painter, right? And he was a womanizer, meaning he had lots of girlfriends. He had a wife and lots of girlfriends. And apparently the wife knew. I don't know if she was okay with it. We'd have to ask her. But some people live that kind of life, and some people judge people who live that kind of life, and that's going to be important for this conversation as well. So it's called pre-moral beingness, meaning you're just you're just looking for the next new date, next new person, next new hobby, next new whatever, but you don't ever commit. It's just about having a lovely time together and then it being over. So, who else was a womanizer? And this is often not talked about. Einstein. Yeah, the guy with the crazy hair. Womanizer. I guess the ladies love that big hair. And so this is stage one. And when you're reading the Rotation of the Crops, you will see that he's talking, that's where the boredom comes in, right? Because if you're just doing the same thing all the time, swipe left, swipe right, swipe left, swipe right, you can get bored with that. Does that make sense? Yeah? Some people don't get bored. Some people, like Pablo Picasso, he stayed in the stage his entire life and gave us some great paintings. Thank you, Pablo. But what happens to most people, according to Mr. Kierkegaard, is that at some point you commit to something. And it could be a person, right? You finally fall in love and you want to get married. It could be you get pregnant and you have a baby and you're going to take care of that baby, right? You have a commitment to that. Or you get a pet, or you commit yourself to your career. Some people do that, right? We have lots of freedom to choose what we commit ourselves to. And what Kierkegaard focuses on is marriage in rotation of the crops, because that's a common commitment. Yes. And we have more freedoms now about who can marry under the law. And so this is an interesting one to think about. And what happens is the moment that you commit, you say, okay, I'm going to marry this person, I want to be with this person, then all of a sudden you're in the world in a different way, right? Because you have someone you want to live forever. You have someone you want to come home to every night. You have someone you want to Netflix binge with. And you have someone who you don't want someone to take away from you, no cheating, please. And so what happens there is that all of a sudden you start seeing the world as black and white, right and wrong. So when you're in this stage and you're out at a party and you're flirting and other people are flirting, everything's all good. When you're in this stage and you're married to someone and someone else flirts with your partner, you're like, that's bad, right? Because that's just what we do. So by committing, which is a beautiful thing, he's not saying it's not beautiful, we change the way we see the world black and white. And so then what happens is, we have all of these rules in life about how to have a good marriage, right? Go to a bookstore or an online bookstore and go to self-help for marriages, right? You'll find millions of books that will tell you how to have a good marriage. Jordan Peterson says the moment in a marriage, one of the partners rolls their eyes in a conversation, the marriage is over, because there's no longer respect. There's no longer careful listening, which is an interesting thought, isn't it? Do you think that's true? When you're in a partnership and they're telling you something and they roll their eyes, is that like, okay, this is over? Is that a deal breaker? Maybe sometimes, not other times. Is that the face? I'm reading your faces here. I've had other students who were like, that's worse than flipping someone off. I don't know about that, but they were very strong about it. And I thought, I don't know. I'm not sure I agree. What do you think, Sophia?
I think it actually depends on the situation.
Yeah, right. I mean, sometimes some moments do call for eye rolling, right? Just like, oh, come on, you're kidding, right? Yeah. And it's not even mean. It's just sort of like, oh gosh, we're not going there again. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. But yes, there could be circumstances where that's very rude. But here we are, we're in marriage. And as you know, because you've read Rotation of the Crops, what happens right away is that when you're in the dating phase, which brings us back here, everything's just fun, right? You're getting flowers, you're getting candy, you're dancing for the first time. You have that wonderful, wonderful first kiss, and the person just smells really good and you can hardly wait, like you can't quit, you're like, did I get a text? Did I get a text, right? You're that kind of thing, that feels so good to be. It's like maddening in some ways, but it feels so good. So then you think when you get married, that every day of your life is going to be like that. And pretty quickly you realize, oh, wow, my partner came home tired and just went to bed, walked right by me. We didn't even have dinner together. Where's the fun in that? So then you get your self-help books and you're like, okay, what can I do to make this marriage better, right? And then you follow all those rules, like don't roll your eyes, or have date night at least once a week. That's very popular concept now. Schedule in me time, all of the stuff they say you do. And right, so you do this research, you go to couples counseling, you guys you're doing it all, following all the rules that are provided by our reason, right, to make a wonderful marriage. And it just doesn't work out. You guys grow in different directions. What, you know, maybe one of you wants to open a real estate business in New York, and you want to stay in California and live near the beach and work in entertainment, you know? And so you've just grown apart. But you're bummed out because you're like, but wait a minute, I followed all the rules. I followed reason. I followed the good and the bad, and I was always good, and I was always committed, and I was always there, and we always had date night, and it still fell apart. And so what do you recognize in this moment, according to Kierkegaard? You realize that ultimately reason is paradoxical. So all that, do you know how you make God laugh? Any of you here? How do you make God laugh? Even if you don't believe in God and you're an atheist, just play with me here, okay? How do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. It's an oldie but a goodie. And the point is that there's stuff we don't have control of. And when we try to control things that are not controllable, like a marriage that is falling apart, what you recognize is that it's not entirely up to us. You can follow all the rules and still think the rug gets pulled out from under you. And the moment you recognize this, and this isn't a criticism of reason, we still use reason, we still have the ethical stage, we still see the aesthetic stage doesn't need the ethical stage, it doesn't have it, right? Everything's fluid. Everything's just like yummy and delicious and beautiful. You're not going, you're nice, you're mean. No. But here you're like, you're a cheater, you're a liar, you're really nice, right? That's what happens here. But once you realize that reason can't actually fully defend these ideas or you know, give you the rules for having a great life, you realize reason's paradoxical, and that can squash you, right? You can be like, oh my God, life is terrible. I was so good and my marriage still fell, right? People do this all the time. And then they're depressed for the rest of their lives. That's a buzzkill. Don't do that, right? You're free. Just recognize this. And what you do in facing this paradoxical nature of reason, you take a leap into the spiritual sphere. And so there's the spiritual sphere. There is a voice higher than norms, right? Because what are norms? You get married and don't cheat. And yet, like over 50% of people do cheat. No one talks about it. It's all in the DL. Don't get bummed out, my friends. This is just a reality. It's not the end of the world. Maybe the mistake is to not understand what life is really like. Yes? Not to be permissive of it, but to get it, to understand it. So in the divine form of the good, that was Plato's good. Remember, only known by the gods, and that is the good itself. And human beings never know it. It's always higher than us. It's only known to the gods. And then there's the objective spiritual, outward seeking, preoccupied with what is outside oneself to avoid dealing with one's inner self. And then subjective, inward, subjectively seeking inward. So you're in the spiritual realm, and there's an objective and a subjective aspect of the spiritual realm. So so this is what will bring you to loving your neighbor as yourself. So interestingly enough, Kierkegaard is an existentialist philosopher, but he's also considered a Christian philosopher. However, Christian philosophy usually is here, right? 10 Commandments, right, wrong, good, bad. Am I right, Sophia? Yeah. And that's really because of the political church imposed that. Really, it's spiritual. And so when I mention Hegel, one of the things that Hegel said God is dead, and that the spiritual aspects of the church are now in the congregation. So right during this lifetime, there's still, and to today, there's still a struggle between the religious, the theological, and the spiritual, right? People will now say online, I'm spiritual, not religious. That's an effort to get the tangles of the control off of the people so we can be spiritual. So one of the things that Kierkegaard emphasizes, and there's nothing easy about this, is loving the unlovable. How can you love the unlovable? because I think the cultural mythology that we're living with in our world today is that if someone has a different political position than you, if someone has a different religion than you, if someone has a, pro-choice, pro-life, you hate them. You can't love them. They're so ridiculous that you can't possibly love someone who has such bad ideas, right? Maskers, anti-maskers, they're just like, they're haters. They're polarized, right? And what we do in Kierkegaard is you get into the spiritual realm and you're no longer dividing people like that. You love your neighbor as yourself, because whatever it is that's in you that can take a position on masks or abortions or politics is in the other person. You just disagree. So you have to hate them. You also don't have to be permissive of them either, but you can love them in a spiritual way and disagree with them. And the idea is that that is healthy for your own well-being and the well-being of the world and everyone. Does that make sense? Wouldn't this be useful today? Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So, right? It's me, 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 yummy, yummy, beautiful, beautiful, all kinds of delicious stuff, staying in the moment. Then it's, uh-oh, I'm committed to something. I don't want anyone to take it away. So now the world's black and white. And what Kierkegaard says is that most people get stuck here. This is where most people are. And then you go, oh, wow, everything they've told me is wrong. Santa Claus doesn't really exist. and then you leap into the spiritual. So instead of being squashed by this truth, you're liberated. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. And so here's more about the spiritual sphere. I'll let you look at that on your own. And here's what I had mentioned to you about love, and a few more quotes from his work of love. And I'll let you look at that later. And so what this is about is eventually what you ultimately want to do is be able to flow through all three of these spheres. So once you've made a leap into the spiritual, and then you go back into the aesthetic and fall in love, it's just even more delicious, right? Paintings are even more beautiful. You're just with the beauty of life in a new way. And then when you commit to someone, the commitment still does bring in the good, bad, right, and wrong, but you flow with it, right? Because now you know that you can love the unlovable. So even if someone causes you great harm, you can agape love them while not approving of the harm they've caused. So you're liberated. You're like kind of like a fairy, in the world in a different way, rather than carrying like the weight of the world on your shoulders. And so I've given you this link to Joseph Campbell. And I don't know if you were familiar with his work, but he talks about following your bliss. And that's when you know how, do you know vinyl records? Do you know what those are? Yeah, they're the best, right? Makes that wonderful sound. The needle goes over there, that sound. But for the needle to play the music, it's got to hit the groove, right? And so the idea is, if you can flow through these three spheres, then if you're flowing with your own bliss, like we know deep inside, as the music of your soul that we got from Emerson, that when you're on track, right, it doesn't mean that everything goes your way, or that your relationships last forever, or that no one dies in your life or anything like that, but it means you're in a kind of flow, because there's something you're here to do, and you're doing it, and you flow with it. Does this make sense to you? Okay, good. So will you pinky swear you all watch this on your own? Yeah, I got a pinky swear over there. Sophia, everybody else, thumbs up, party hats, hearts. Are you here? Betsy's gonna do it. Okay, good. All right. Okay, cool. So love thy neighbor, yet the true love is love for the neighbor, or it is not to find the lovable object, but to find the unlovable object lovable. And this is my birthday party, which was May 15th. I keep this picture because it was when the pandemic just started. And May 15th, 2 years ago, was when we were supposed to be released from our stay-at-home order. So we thought we were going to celebrate that and my birthday. And guess what? They didn't let us off the stay-at-home order. And so we didn't know what was going on. And if you could measure here, we measured. It was 6 feet away from each other, and we had blankets and everything. We all showed up with like masks and alcohol, and we had a lot of fun. And then we got in trouble for playing music too loud. And so right, you can be like this with your neighbor, or you can be like this with your neighbor in the middle of the pandemic, right? We could have just stayed in our little homes and turned our noses up at each other, but we found ways to love each other in the midst of the pandemic. Does this make sense? Yeah. Okay. So the piece that you read for today, Rotation of the Crops, A Venture in a Theory of Social Prudence. Who knows what rotation of the crops means, literally, rather than the way Kierkegaard's using it? Yes, Kayla.
I don't know if this is going to be like the most accurate, detailed description, but I know there's like, in order to like produce more crops, there's like, I think multiple methods, but sometimes, you have one crop in one season and then you do a different one in the other season, or you can actually like physically like rake the land and like actually rotate the seeds and things like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that was perfectly said. Yes. And because if you keep planting the same thing, the soil's dead. It has no longer any nutrimental content. And also because we use all these pesticides, that contributes to the problem. So then we take that idea, and so how can we marry someone and be with them for 60 years and just expect it to be good? And that is what people do, right? They're like, okay, I'm married. Good, you're here. See you at 5. And you determine things like who's going to take out the trash and who's cooking the dinner, and and then you just think it's going to last forever, but it doesn't, because you have to rotate the crops. You have to stir things up, which doesn't mean you need to cheat or anything like that. We're not going bananas here. All we're saying is that life asks this of us. And have you ever found yourself not rotating the crops of your life? You're just like on a treadmill, getting nowhere, running to stay in place. Well, don't. Come up with a hobby, start photography. I just bought some roller skates. And people get older and then stop making new friends. Don't do that. Find the meetups online, take acting classes. I don't know. But get out there and do stuff. Don't let yourself become bored. And so a little bit more about Kierkegaard and his life. He was madly in love with this beautiful lady, and Regina, and she wanted to marry him, and he wanted to marry her, and she was so lovely. You can just tell she's so lovely. And he decided not to marry her. They were engaged, evidently, and he broke off the engagement because, well, he's such a prolific writer. And the amount of books that he wrote in the short lifetime he had are astounding. And so one, he didn't think he would be able to be there for her, right? And he didn't want to commit to her and not be a proper husband. And he also was concerned that she would get old and he'd have to be with an old haggard person who was fat from having babies. What a scoundrel, right? But here, not really, he's just being honest, right? He was just being honest. I don't know if he told her this, but he broke off the engagement, but he did write about it under these pseudonyms, right? Not under his real name. So this is, in philosophy, you put your raw cards on the table and we think about these things, right? Because I remember when I was young, I thought, oh God, what if I marry someone and he goes bald and I have to sleep in bed with a bald head? Like, that concerned me as a little kid. And then in my second marriage, my husband went bald. And I laughed so hard. It was fine. I didn't mind. But, like think of the little girl's eyes. I was just like, that would be so gross. He'd have to wear a wig. And bald is beautiful. And lots of people look super awesome bald. But you know how we think as little kids, And as adults, we do have some of these things in our mind. But here, guess who has the last laugh? Regina. She married another man, had lots of babies, remained beautiful. She had the great genes, not a bunch of lines, and she was fit. And anyway, she got a good husband, and apparently he was a good father, and it all worked out the way it did. Isn't that wild to think about? So what I would like to ask, will someone read this quote? Because this is going to get us a really nice picture of the piece that you read, Kierkegaard's philosophy and existentialism generally. Would you read it, Sophia, for us?
Okay.
You want me to make it bigger?
Yeah, please.
Let's see, how can I think this should do it? There, have that.
Okay, that's good. Marry and you will regret it. Don't marry, you will also regret it. Marry or don't marry, you will regret it either way. Laugh at the world's foolishness, you will regret it. Weep over it, you will regret that too. Laugh at the world's foolishness or weep over it, you will regret both. Believe a woman, you will regret it. Believe her not, you will also regret it. Hang yourself, you will regret it. Do not hang yourself, you will regret that too. Hang yourself or don't hang yourself, you will regret it either way. Whether you hang yourself or do not hang yourself, you will regret both. This, gentlemen, is the essence of all philosophy.
Thank you. Very well read. So, so what do you suppose he's saying here with this? First of all, do not hang yourself. He's getting you to laugh, right? And the laughter, when you read that, that's so outrageous, right? It's irony because we're not going to hang ourselves. So we know that he's pushing. This is hyperbolic. He wants us to think. He wants to push our buttons. So we go, what? Because of course, if you do hang yourself, how are you going to regret it, right? You're not going to be around for regret. But so what do you suppose he's saying? Yes, Kayla.
That no matter what choice you make, you can, I don't know if he's going so much into like the fact that you can control it, but he's saying that no matter what choice you make, there's going to be situations where you'll regret it. So either way, you're kind of screwed. So, and then I also feel like if we're going like deeper into the philosophy of it, I'm assuming that he's going to kind of get to that if you make two choices, either way, you're going to regret one of them, then you can kind of change your mindset and then work towards not regretting it and knowing, instead of being like, oh, I wish I made that choice, you'd be in the same situation either way.
Right. Like one debate that's going on right now is, do women need to have babies to be fulfilled? Right? To have a fulfilling life. And so for a long time, that's been the case. Like you don't know how beautiful life is until you've had a child. And men and women both say that. But a recent paper came out that said at least half of the people who have children regret having children and are not fulfilled by the process. I'm like, oh, but it's when that paper came out, I was like, oh, this is so Kierkegaard. And so but it was a real study. So right, because some people have kids and they have lovely, wonderful families that are extended, and some people have kids that are just real awful people and difficult to deal with, right? Because they're other human beings, and we're told we're supposed to love our parents, and we're told we're supposed to love our children, and maybe you can love them on the level of them being unlovable, right? In the way that Kierkegaard talks about it, but sometimes it's it's just not, it's not flowy, it's not flowy in the way that we think it's going to be, or we think it ought to be. And so when we become aware of that, you don't end up spending your life in regret. Oh, I should have had children. Oh, I should have been an actor. Oh, I should have gone to college right out of high school. All of those kinds of things, let it go. Because you could have gone early and something could have taken you in the wrong direction, or you could go back when you're 30 and something will take you in the right or the wrong direction. So it's really about letting go of the things we don't have control over and being with life as it really is, and being there on the level of the spiritual, which reminds us that reason is paradoxical. So to say you regret something and live with that regret is not sensible, because you will regret it either way. Isn't this liberating? Or do you feel that it's liberating? Yeah, because then life can happen and you can deal with it and, go on to the next new beautiful day. So he says this: love is destroyed by marriage. One must rotate the crops. And what he means by this is, you're in this realm and you have an idea of what you think love is. And pretty soon you're in this realm. And, that love, you don't like the way they chew their cereal, or they come home with stinky shoes, or I don't know, and so it's just not like in the aesthetic realm. So when he says love is destroyed by marriage, this is a strong statement. And at first it might seem like he's down on marriage and he didn't get married, but not necessarily. He says we're going to commit to things, right? And to make this a full, beautiful, wonderful marriage, you have to rotate the crops, and whatever that means to you, right? Maybe you need to go on a vacation or a staycation or who knows what. So a couple of important terms in Kierkegaard's writing is the concept of anxiety, angst, and what he says here, we have anxiety about the decisions we've made, the mistakes that we've made. Going back to this idea of regret, we feel anxiety about it, right? Everybody have you all had a moment of anxiety in your life? And a lot of times we'll blame it on other people, or we'll take the responsibility on ourselves. But he reminds us that life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forward. Right? So when you have anxiety about what you did last week or last year or 5 years ago, just understand that you have to live in the moment, and you can only understand it by looking back. So don't regret it. And by understanding this concept, it alleviates the angst, the anxiety. Does that make sense? We're more powerful than we realize. So this notion of despair is a lot of people are living a life of despair. Yes. And they think it's because they've lost a person or a thing or a job opportunity, or who knows, we have lots of reasons that we claim for having despair. But what Kierkegaard points out is that one does not despair over the loss or the person or the thing. It's about how one thinks about the loss, right? And so people will spend an entire lifetime grieving over the loss of someone, when really they could change their mind about how they think about the loss, because it's really in your own mind. It's in your own thinking. Yes, it's really sad. Yes, it's really hurtful. Grieving is painful and sometimes a very long process, but it's not over the object. It's over your thinking about the object, your feeling about the object, and the object could be a being, so it could be a subject. Does that make sense? Now, so we're going to go just adding these concepts so that you can understand the reading at a deeper level. So one of the things that Kierkegaard talks about, because remember, you're in the aesthetic sphere, you move into the ethical sphere, and then you recognize that reason is paradoxical, right? Meaning you don't get a thesis, an antithesis, like one idea, an opposing idea, and a synthesis. Life isn't like that. It's paradoxical. So you have to leap into the spiritual sphere. And so sometimes when we are in life experiences, we encounter what's called the ineffable. Do you know what that is? The ineffable is something that is so profound, you don't have words for it. Have you ever experienced that? It can be so beautiful, so horrible, so terrorizing, so wonderful that there are no words to describe it. And so that's called the ineffable. And according to Kierkegaard, there are two responses to the ineffable. Silence is one. You know, have you ever been just like wordless? Like, I have no words, right? You're just, I'm going to be quiet here. And the other response is laughter. In response to the ineffable, silence and laughter. So laughter is important, essential to understanding Kierkegaard's philosophy. And it can help you out of despair, and it can help you out of angst. And so could I have someone read this passage as well? Kayla, would you be willing to read? If you're not comfortable reading, I'll do it.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Okay. A strange thing happened to me in my dream. I was wrapped into the seventh heaven. There sat all the gods assembled. As a special dispensation, I was granted the favor to have one wish. Do you wish for youth, said Mercury, or for beauty, or power, or a long life? Or do you wish for the most beautiful woman, or any other of the many fine things we have in our treasure trove? Choose but only one thing. For a moment, I was at a loss. Then I addressed the gods in this wise. Most honorable contemporaries, I choose one thing, that I may always have the laughs on my side. Not one god made answer, but all began to laugh. From this, I concluded that my wish had been granted, and thought that the gods knew how to express themselves with good taste, for it would surely have been inappropriate to answer gravely. Your wish has been granted.
Thank you. Nicely read. Okay, what is he saying here? I mean, here, let me ask you this. If you could have any wish, say there really were, you know, a panel of gods and you were before them and you could have any wish, what would it be? Put it in the chat. Health, okay. Sophia? You thinking? Betsy, Ethan, Marco, Harley, Jorah, Jacob, what's your wish? And you only have, being smarter. Health, smarter, those are both doable. Can you hear me? No. You are muted. You'd have to take the mute off. So there's a button on your panel. Well, okay, and so I see a few of you, there we go, have answered. But why on earth does he say laughter? Yeah, right. More time, more time. But remember what Seneca says. It's not that we don't have enough time. It's that we don't use our time well. Could be true. I don't know, Marco. I hear you though. Good wish. But why laughter? You know, no one wrote like $1 billion, world peace. Laughter. Why? Because life is paradoxical. Life is different than we're told that it's going to be. You know, think about our current moment, right? It's 2021. The richest person on the planet apparently is Elon Musk. It might be Jeff Bezos. They are right neck and neck, right? Like a horse race. And we're thinking about colonizing the moon, right? We have a spaceship out at Pluto, deciding if that should still be a planet in our solar system. We drive cars. I always think when I'm driving, I've been thinking about this a lot. Do you ever think about why on earth do we permit just anyone to drive around in a 3,000-pound car? What are we thinking? And I look at her just like, I gotta get home. And so, and then here we are at home on Zoom, wearing masks, social distancing, because of a microscopic virus that no one has actually really seen. Meaning life is just what? Kind of absurd, paradoxical. Get it? That's the point. So if you have $1 billion, guess what? That's still the case. If you have your health, that's still the case. If you're smarter, Betsy, guess what? All of the smart people on the planet don't know what to do. What can we do? Do you see what I'm doing? All you have is laughter. I mean, the nuclear waste from nuclear energy is now melting down into our earth, and it may just go all the way through earth. Guess what? No matter how smart you are, no one knows what to do about it. So the best thing you can have on your side, the best gift of the gods, is laughing at it, being able to laugh at it. Does that make sense to you? Because it's the ineffable. It's the unexplainable. Sophie, making sense, or am I bumming you out? I don't see laughter. Okay, so what I did is I put together here for you some really funny things to look at. And, you know, have you ever just gotten out of a funk by watching a TikTok video? Yeah, okay. That happened to me over Thanksgiving. My brother sent me a TikTok video the morning of Thanksgiving, and I was like, you have made my life better. I watched it a million times. But so may I share a funny one with you? And it's like right on the edge of being offensive. So are you ready for that? Because that's what we have to do. We have to find that line that doesn't cross good taste, you know, into the bad taste realm, but it's still like strong enough to like make you giggle. You know that line? It's kind of hard to decide where that line is sometimes. So I have shared this with other students, and it seems like we're okay. So here we go. And
literally everything every day. Are you tired of people complaining about literally everything every day? Do you find yourself overly annoyed by the actions of others? And you need fuck 'em all. When prescribed by your doctor, fuck 'em all can significantly reduce your ability to give a fuck. Tired of Karens not minding their business? People complaining about masks got you down? Fuck 'em all. Fuck 'em all has been tested and proven to help you not give a fuck.
Used to give a fuck, but now that I've tried fuck 'em all, I don't give a fuck at all.
If you continue to give a fuck after taking fuck 'em all, please consult with your physician. Side effects may include insensitivity, lack of care, and an extreme case of mind your damn business.
did that not just make your day? And isn't she brilliant? I've looked for her. I don't know who she is. I want to follow her, but I like she just. I don't think it could be better. And so there are other Chris Rock on COVID-19, hilarious. I don't know if you like his work. The Argument Clinic. This is from Monty Python, and it's where people go in to an office because they want to engage in an argument. So they like sign up. It's so funny. And, you know, life does get us down if we are stuck in the ethical realm. And how do we get out of it? By laughing at the paradoxical nature of life, by laughing at the human condition. Not mean-spirited. That is not what he's talking about. If it's cruel and mean-spirited, that's not what he means by laughter. Does that make sense? So in philosophy, there are three main theories of laughter. So I like to share those with you. Now, these are not Kierkegaard's theories on laughter. They're just philosophical theories on laughter. And this can be useful. And you can use this as, you know, one of your mini exercises to see, you know, what's inspiring you to laugh? You know, so, and by having the names for the different theories, it really becomes a fascinating observation of self as to why you've laughed in different situations. So the superiority laughter and it's related with these philosophers. Our laughter expresses feelings of superiority over someone or over a former state of ourselves. And so it's not that you're better, that kind of superior, inferior. It's like when someone's naive and you laugh. So, and we do it all the time. And if we're being kind about it, you know, that's the good kind spirited laughter he was referring to. So an example I could give you is that when my niece was little, she heard about knock knock jokes. I don't know how she heard about knock knock jokes, but she didn't get the concept. Like, so she would say like random things like knock knock, who's there? Pickles who? Pickles, I want a hamburger, Aunt Micah. And you're like, what? You are not getting the concept. What? And she wouldn't stop doing it. I remember her being in the car with me and jumping in the far back just so she could keep giving me like bad knock knock jokes. And I'm like, I'm pulling over. So then I got her a deck of knock knock joke cards. So like, could you please get the concept? Right. And and it's still funny to me today to think of, she was just really bright and smart. You know, she knew what she was doing. But you can see how this is kind spirited, right? And also we don't get, if you don't have laughter on your side, I could have gotten mad at her, but instead I was laughing so hard. Her mother, my sister and I, we were driving, we had to pull over because we were laughing so hard at her. And then of course that just fueled her nonsense. Okay, so then there's the incongruity theory. We live in an orderly world where we have come to expect certain patterns among things, properties, and events. And so this is associated with these philosophers. And so I think a fine example was, you know, when I was blow drying my hair last week, and my blow dryer got hooked on one of the pulls on the drawer, right? It went flying across the room, broke. That thing, you know, like the mechanism broke and it caught on fire. Well, it was scary, but it was also super funny, right? Because that's incongruous. Didn't expect it to happen. Or I came home. Oh, here's another funny thing. I came home last night and I have all of my masks, you know, because we have to have masks. So instead of being bummed out about it, I put them all in a really pretty bowl. And I came home and the air conditioning had leaked into and soaked all of my masks. Terrible. So I had to laugh at it. That's incongruous, right? You don't expect that. But the good thing is that it caught all of the water. So water didn't go all over my house. And so it's a mismatch between what we expect life to be like and what it is. Happens all the time, doesn't it? Yeah. And then the relief theory, which I think is what we got from the video that we just watched. So a laughter is a release of energy. It occurs when some emotion is built up and then suddenly then is seen as inappropriate, right? Because when you watch her and you hear her mention Karens and you hear her mention, you know, people have gotten you down with all of their talks about masks, and then you laugh and you're like, wow, I was really bumming out about masks. And it is a challenge, no question about it. But when we can laugh about it, it brings levity to a very serious situation. And then that allows us to live a good life, even though we have to deal with these annoying things. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. And then just hear a little bit more about laughter. One of the things that I wonder if you've learned is that we usually think of a smile as our mouth, right? But actually we smile with our eyes. And thank darn goodness, because we've masked very often in life now. And you can still tell if someone's smiling, can't you? I mean, sometimes, not always, right? But we're getting better at it. When it first started, it was like, oh my gosh, a bunch of zombies in the classroom. But now we read each other. And we do know that research indicates that you can fake a smile with your mouth, but not with your eyes. Your eyes tell, your eyes give it away. Ha 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 ha. Okay. And so just a little bit here, the leap of faith, the paradox of Christian incarnation is presented as an offense to reason, which can only be overcome by a leap of faith, right? So people who have faith in this sort of spiritual realm of existence cannot defend it with reason. Right? So, and we hear people trying to do it all the time, coming up with a logical argument for why you should have faith. Doesn't get you there. And that's just another way to understand when we get to the paradox of life, you have to take a leap of faith. Leap of faith into, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Christianity, right? You can go back to Emerson and make your spirituality up of Buddhism and Kabbalah and Christianity. You get to do that, but it's a mistake to think that you can have a logical argument for it. It's a leap. It's something else. It's another realm. And it looks like increasingly, even with all of this emphasis on being, atheists and the harm that the political church has done to people, looks like we still need a spiritual practice, be it praying, be it meditation, being it yoga or Tai Chi or, a dance meditation. It feeds something in our soul that contributes favorably to our well-being. Do you think that's right? And that we just need to reframe it to fit 2021, which it's almost 2022. Hard to believe, the paradox of life. Okay, so boredom. Isn't this funny? I don't know if you think this is funny, but this just was a knee slapper to me. People are stupid, change my mind. This dog. I feel like dogs are just like sitting around so wise watching us going, really? Are you kidding? I saw this little meme on the internet, and it said, my dog is so dumb. I just watched him chase his tail for 20 minutes and then pause. It goes, oh, and then I noticed I was watching my dog chasing his tail for 20 minutes. So like, who's stupider? And that's just fun to think about. Humans, the human condition, what Nietzsche will say, who we're reading next. He says, we're human, all too human, right? Just own it, own our fate. Okay, so all people are boring. Can you contradict my statement? Have you ever had that moment where you're just like, everyone's boring? I could not hear another, do not tell me your dream, do not tell me your romantic problem, do not tell me the issues you're having with your shoes. I'm bored. Yes, been there? And then other times it's just lovely. They're like, we love to hear their stories. Sometimes I love just to listen to someone tell me nonsense, right? I'm just like, tell me more. And this is all a matter of flowing through these stages. And when you're in the aesthetic stage, you might be listening to a nonsense story because they're so darn cute. You're just like, yeah, keep talking, please. And then when you're in the ethical stage, you'll be like, okay, I'm being an active listener because I want this marriage to work. And then when you're in the aesthetic realm, you're just like in flow. So yeah, tell me about your dreams. Kind of. I'm just sort of giving you different ways to frame this. Does it make sense? Everybody. How about that? Jacob, Jorah, Ethan, Harley, Betsy, Marco, Sophia, and Kayla. I can see you nodding. Yeah? Okay, good. So we have a little bit of time left, and this I've already shared with you, boredom and children. And you know the Adam and Eve story. Oh, good, Ethan. Adam was like living alone, apparently naked. He didn't even have to exercise, and he looked perfect, and he lived in like this beautiful garden with all this yummy food. He didn't have to go to work. You just sit around and be. And guess what happened? He got bored. So then God had to make him a wife. And then he got a wife. And then the wife tempted him with the, apple or the pomegranate. And then the world got bored, right? So they built a Tower of Babel to go to heaven, right? And isn't that what we're doing? We're bored on planet Earth, and we've polluted it. So let's go to Mars. We're bored. That's what we're doing. Yeah. Elon Musk was asked recently in an interview, you have so much money and you're starting this, SpaceX program. Shouldn't you be giving to charity? You know, why are you going to Mars with that? 26,000 people die of hunger every day, including in the US. You know, this is worldwide. It's not just in on another continent. And his response was, yeah, I think a percentage of our money should go to charity. He goes, but also I think life is about playing, and we should do that too. So, you know, why not use this knowledge we have to go to Mars? What an answer. And I don't know if you agree, but he just flowed with that. That was his position. And how does this relate to Kierkegaard? Because otherwise we get bored. We get bored. 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Have a little fun on the weekends. Boring. Let's go to Mars. Okay. And so he talks here about how everything ends. You know, what is there to do now? We have lots to do. We have social justice things to attend to. We have a pandemic. We have loss of freedoms due to the pandemic. We're wondering who our next new president will be. We have so much to do, but is it just boring or is it interesting? Maybe sometimes it's interesting and sometimes it's boring, right? But a truly divine life, when you are in the spiritual sphere, things aren't boring. Because you're not caught in it. You're not caught in the weight of it, in the ethical sphere. And you're not just looking for your next beautiful, carat or diamond, that obsession in the aesthetic sphere. So to be truly divine is to be, be in this world and not of this world. That's how Thoreau describes it. To be in the world, but not of the world. Do you know what a bodhisattva is? A concept from Buddhism. This is important because Nietzsche is very, talks favorably of the Buddha and Christ, even though he will argue that God is dead. But we'll see what that means next time we meet. But a bodhisattva in Buddhist theology is a person who's reached this high sphere of spiritual existence and then comes back into the world and lives amidst the madness of the human condition. And he may be, and he's not a monk up on a mountain hiding away from the world to find God or spirituality, spiritual enlightenment, but rather he might be your post person delivering your mail, or might be the person checking you out at Trader Joe's, or might be the person driving 60 on the freeway in the fast lane alone in her car wearing a mask, right? That might be the most enlightened person and you just don't know it. And this is a concept that Kierkegaard writes about, and it's the dark night. So we think the enlightened people are the, like the Pope and religious leaders and people who present themselves as so wise. But actually it's the person you pass, walking their dog. That's how spirituality works. Does that make sense? And you're not bored when you're in flow with life, because you just understand, right? That the flowers come into being and they go out of being, that you love, and that love comes into your life and it leaves. Everything's in a state of change. Okay. And so here this is. Everything is, not only do we have to rotate the crops, everything's in a process of change. So by being in flow with the rotation of the crops, or being in flow with what life is like, he has this note on hope. Not until hope has been thrown overboard, does one begin to live artistically. As long as a person hopes, he cannot limit itself. It is indeed beautiful to see a person put out to sea with the fair wind of hope. One may utilize the chance to let oneself to to be towed along, but one ought never have it on board one's craft, least of all as pilot, for it is an untrustworthy shipmaster. For this reason, too, hope was one of Prometheus's dubious gifts. Instead of giving human beings foreknowledge of immortals, he gave them hope. And this you can see why, too, it's better to have laughter on your side than hope. Because what is hope? It's an empty concept. Well, I sure hope the pandemic ends soon. Ugh, forget it. Be in the moment. Don't hope for it being better. Be here now. Be present to it. So hope is misleading. If you live a life of hope, you're not doing anything about the change that needs to happen, that is happening. It excuses you from participating in the glory of this life, right? Life is now. Life doesn't begin after the pandemic. Life is happening now in philosophy class on Zoom. This is it. It's not a dress rehearsal. And if we live mesmerized by hope, we're not living at all. Forgetting, if only I could forget. The more poetically one remembers, the more easily one forgets. For to remember poetically is actually only expression for forgetting. When I remember poetically, my experience has already undergone change of having lost everything painful. And are you storytellers? I'm a grand storyteller. We are the original bards. You know, my last name's Daly, but the history of Daly, we were the O'Dailies, the storytellers, the bards in Ireland. And I definitely got that in my genes. I love to tell stories. And boy, once I get going, they just get bigger and bigger and more exciting. You're like, well, that's not exactly how it happened, but it's my version. So it's not lying, but it's embellishing, right? And it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And if you understand this, it can lead you into despair. But if you're celebrating it, it's a beautiful part of our existence, right? Because if you misunderstand this, you can despair because you've misled your reader, or you've taken away an understanding that the loss gives us something, right? Like the merry widow. Life isn't all just about snuggles and cuddles and yummy coffee and red roses. There are thorns. There's the challenging part of life. And as it turns out, when we sort of understand that, like, the bodhisattva, despair can't get to us. Do you see how some of our thinking can lead us into despair? Hope can get us there. Forgetting can get us there. What do you think? Here's a little bit about marriage. Do you know this marriage? Do you know who this is? Bill and Melinda Gates. So they were married for a long time. They grew a business together, and they're still in business together, but they've gotten divorced because of all kinds of huge problems. But because marriage, we think of Bill and Melinda Gates, right, as this wonderful marriage, traditional marriage. Did you know that written into the prenup, like the prenuptial agreements, what you agree to before you get married, he wrote into his prenups that he could occasionally sleep with his girlfriend. And she agreed to it, right? Life is different than we think it is. That's it's as though Kierkegaard wants to open the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz curtain, not to be mean, but rather to prevent us from angst and being destroyed by thinking that reason isn't paradoxical. We hear shame about divorce. We hear people saying, oh, there's something wrong with the world right now because 50% of marriages end in divorce. Well, sometimes that's unfortunate, right? People leave marriage too quickly. But there's the other side of it when people couldn't get out of marriages and they lived together unhappily for 60 years. Why do people think that was good? You have a big celebration. And little do you know, they hate each other, but they show up with smiles on their faces and say thank you to the kids and the grandkids and the great-great-grandkids for yet another year of unhappiness that they are sticking to because they are stuck in the ethical realm. Bad people get divorced. No. Sometimes bad people get divorced. Sometimes good people get divorced. We're lucky to have the freedom to be able to get divorced and find a more suitable partner. Sometimes we do grow apart. This isn't to be frivolous. Sometimes you work through it and sometimes you walk away. And that's what they finally decided. Make sense? So I know we're almost out of time, but there's a poet named William Blake, and he wrote a series of poems about innocence and experience. And so this can be this can help you kind of understand where Kierkegaard is going, because we arrive innocent into the world, and then we have experiences and we're disappointed, and if we get stuck in the ethical realm, we might be squashed by the trauma we experience in these lives. And so the idea in innocence and experience is that you learn about the world and you have all kinds of expectations, and you go into the world and you live your life, and it's different than you think, and you find out that reason is paradoxical, and you take a leap into the spiritual so that you can appreciate life for exactly what it is. Lots of beauty, lots of sorrow. It's all part of the human experience. So the goal is to be able to experience these life challenges and to be able to still wake up in the morning and see the beautiful sun, right? See your puppy dogs excited about going for a walk, right? Even though it's not all as beautiful and perfect as you thought that it was going to be. Okay, and so conclusion, vary oneself is the real secret. Even the most elaborate theory is merely poverty compared with what genius is in its ubiquity easily discovers. So the beauty is in the very common. And so here's a little story from my own life, and find your invitation here is to find these in your own life, right? Find the beauty in your own life. Even on mornings where you wake up tired and bummed out and you don't feel like writing your philosophy paper. Right. So one day I was going to work, and you need to be on time and respectful of everyone's time. And I walk the dogs right before I leave, in fairness to them, of course. And I'm walking the dogs, and I have a time crunch, and I see this bird. This is a true story, and it looked like it was shivering, and I was like, "Are you just taking a bird bath? Or are you shivering?" I said this to the bird. Lord knows the neighbors were probably watching, but whatever. And because I just noticed there was something to do. So I watched the bird for a minute, and I said, "Do you need a rescue? Because I don't think you're having fun. At first it looked like a bird bath. Now it looks like you're stuck." So I said that to the bird, and the bird actually lifted its wing and fell into the water as if to answer my question. I need your help. I'm not kidding you. So I ran down to my car, and I got this paper bag, and I brought like a thick paper bag, and I put it before this sweet bird. And I said, "If I'm bothering you and being an annoying human, just ignore me. But if you need a rescue, jump onto this, and I'm going to get you out of this water." And the bird just jumped onto the paper immediately. And then I brought the bird to a safe place to dry and live and go on. And then I came to work. I went to work. And so it's not because I was in the ethical realm. You see a bird who needs help and only good people will help him. I was in the spiritual realm. I was seeing what there was to do. I was paying attention to a bird who needed help, not because I'm going to get into heaven or because, neighbors are going to like me, but because that's what there is to do. Does that make sense? And isn't life beautiful if you attend to these things? Like, I rescued a bird today because I was paying attention. I wasn't like, "Oh, I've got to get to work. I've got to get to work." And by the way, I made it on time. Thank you. It's as though when you're in flow, and this Stoic philosopher said this too, when you're in flow, it's as though you can make more out of time. So you can have your wish, Marco, if we are in flow. It's as though time is malleable. that's what I have to share with you. And you're going to read Nietzsche for next time.